Okay, we're live here. Welcome everyone to another edition of the CMV Checkup. Today is Friday, July 3rd, 2020. Pretty exciting day. I'm here at 201 Portage in Winnipeg, Manitoba, sunny Winnipeg, Manitoba. It's been pretty sunny here for the past while. I'm sitting live here thanks to the miracle of technology with the chair of the New Brunswick CMV Canada chapter, Mike George. Mike, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Rob. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
All right. Mike has got a phenomenal story. I was lucky enough to meet Mike, I want to say in Utah. Is that right? Like, was that be like 8 years ago or something like that?
2014, I think it was.
2014. So 6 years ago, met Mike. Just we connected immediately. A dad with an unbelievable story. Mike and Jan actually founded Soaring Families, which is another organization that we're going to talk about in a bit. But your story about CMV, your son Ben, is a phenomenal one. Before we get to the story, I want to remind you, if you're watching this on YouTube, please take a second to subscribe, subscribe on YouTube and follow, like, and share on Facebook. We've had a phenomenal month, CMV Awareness Month, June 2020. It just wrapped up on Tuesday. Had a fantastic month. We had shared a ton of stories right here on the CMV Checkup. We had amazing progress with our medical advisory committee. We had 20,000 plus views on our YouTube channel with all the videos on the CMV Checkup, or YouTube and Facebook, I should say. We had inquiries like never before. So we're extremely thrilled and we're thankful to all of the viewers out there, to all the people that have watched, that have tuned in, that have shared the videos. We are extremely thankful that CMV is now taking a larger place in society and in discussion about health for newborns. CMV Awareness Month 2020 was a good one, eh, Mike?
You bet.
Yeah, it was pretty neat. The first time that we really participate this actively, and it was fun. So thank you to you, Mike, and to everyone who watched out there and supported and shared. Fantastic month. We're going to do it again in 2021. It's going to be bigger and better than ever before. Enough about that and me thanking people, but I do like to thank people because without them, it can't really happen. Mike, your story is fantastic and phenomenal. You're out in New Brunswick. Right. Please tell me your experience with CMV, which started, I don't know, like 30 years ago, probably?
Almost. So Ben celebrated his 28th birthday a few days ago.
Happy birthday, Ben.
Yeah. It's quite amazing. So, back in 1992, there was no social media. There was very little sort of easy way to connect with families. And when, you go into, the birth of your child, and he was our third. So it was all kind of very familiar, and you think everything is just, working the way it should. And the birth was uneventful, and, but an hour later we realized that it wasn't so good. And in fact, it was awful. And we were met by a neonatologist who basically said that, we had a very sick baby. He has an enlarged liver and spleen. His head is too small. His platelet count is dangerously low, and he's probably not going to live the day. And it was all kind of a one run-on sentence. And, you're standing there, sitting there thinking, okay, you've got the wrong person here. You must mean some other family, because we just saw Ben an hour ago and he was fine. But it was Ben, and he was very, very ill, very sick. And it took about a week for them to, I guess, diagnose that it really was CMV. And at the time, nobody knew what CMV was, or at least, the physicians. And I have 3 physicians in my family, and my father, who passed away a few years ago, the only thing he knew about CMV was that it was a side effect or I guess a complication for patients who are immunocompromised. And like that meant nothing to me. This is Ben, this is a newborn. So we searched for answers for many days while he was in hospital, and nobody really could answer many of them. And some of our questions were kind of unfair. They didn't know how things were going to go. But I guess the most memorable point in a traumatic way was a pediatric neurologist came and basically summed it up and said, Ben may never walk, talk, or go to school. And I mean, when you think of that, you think of just one of those things, it's devastating. When you try to put them all together, we just couldn't process it at all.
We had Denis and Nicole Villefort on the show a couple of weeks ago, and their daughter was born around the same time as Ben. They had a very similar story. Had never heard of CMV. Nobody was really able to explain much to them. They actually ended up losing their daughter. They were told the same thing by their doctors. Your daughter's never going to walk, talk, or go to school. They actually lost their daughter, Lynn. And I can't imagine the difficulty that must have been for you hearing that message for the first time and what you were kind of facing.
Well, I mean, you couldn't, as I say, process it. It was just words, and, they thought, well, how possible? What kind of a life is this going to be for anybody, right? We basically thought that, our whole life as we knew it, we had 2 small kids, it was over. Like, we were going to have this huge burden for the rest of our lives, or that, if Ben did die in the first week, as they thought he would, we'd be grieving forever. So it was the worst. It was my worst nightmare. And it was just an awful, awful experience.
They told you he might die in the first week?
Yeah. Well, he told me that he may not live the day he was born. And then he, as the days went on and they learned more and they did, a gazillion tests of, this, that, and the other thing. He showed that he, was a fighter, and thought, well, the part of dying got less as we got on, but it was still, there were so many things, so many complications, and he was so fragile that, anything could have happened.
I met Mike, and I met Jan as well, your wife, in Utah, and you guys are such strong people. You guys have such perception and perspective on life. I can't imagine how difficult that would be, but I know how strong you guys are, and I know how brave you guys are. So I guess Ben was lucky to have you guys as parents. Well,
I look at it actually the other way around, that, at the time we didn't think we were going to make it. Honestly, we didn't think our marriage was going to make it. And this was, but somehow, I guess I attribute it to Ben, that he sort of showed us to never take no for an answer. And that, there were the way in which you needed to live your life and the things that were important. He, shone a light on all of those. And I think the day-to-day stuff of the worry and the stress of everything, that was there, but there was a bigger picture that he showed, that this doesn't have to turn out, in a bad way. And, here we are 28 years later, and, life's not easy, no question about it, but, we're 28 years in, and, it's quite amazing some days you think about it, how did we get here?
Denis and Nicole also mentioned, you're the second parent now to mention the issue of marriage and how tough it is on a marriage to be a CMV parent, or I'd say any parent that deals with a child with a serious disability.
Mm-hmm.
Really interesting and really important to remember that if you're a parent watching here, that you also need support. It's important for you guys to get support and for you guys to think of yourselves a little bit if you're going through this, because it is tough. I know my wife and I went through it too. It's tough. And we've not been through 28 years. What are we? We celebrated our, I better get this right, 13th wedding anniversary last month. So it's, we survived it through, but there's so much that we've learned since then. And I want you to start taking me through the story of Ben, if you can, and him growing up and what the doctors were telling you as he was growing up.
Sure.
Ben was not verbal.
He's nonverbal, right? So, yeah. In a way, the neurologist was right. He doesn't walk on his own. He doesn't speak like you and I speak. He uses an electronic communication device. But, 28 years in, we say, so what? Like there's different ways to communicate. It doesn't have to be the typical way you might think of. So, and that was one of the keys was that, we learned that, yes, he's going to have challenges, and it's not going to be the same as the typical way, but that doesn't mean there isn't an alternative to doing it. And so I guess what we started with, in early days, we saw a number of specialists and, physiotherapists and speech pathologists and the like. And, they hadn't had a whole lot of experience with someone with as complex care as Ben. And it really wasn't that, I guess, fruitful in terms of helping his development. But nevertheless, we kind of believe that he should follow the normative pathways of life as any child would. You go to school, you go to a summer camp, when you're older, you get a part-time job, or you go on to post-secondary, and you live a life as independent as possible. So we had that, I guess, overall reaching goal, though we had no idea how we were going to get there. And we started in his kindergarten days. He only went 3 mornings a week, because of the time he was having fairly regular seizures. And we just couldn't figure out how that was going to happen. How could we leave him with anybody? And what did that look like? So actually, between me and Jan, we took those 3 mornings a week and spent those at school. So we were close by in case some emergency happened.
So you guys were at school every day with him, one of you?
Well, it was just mornings at that time, right?
But every day that he was at school.
Yeah. I mean, he had an attendant. He had someone with him, and we didn't go into the classroom with them, but we were there in the school, because the school staff were terrified that some emergency would happen and they'd be on the hook for it. So our resolution to this was that, no, you know what? We're here. If something happens, we're just outside the door, or whatever the case was. So we took that responsibility because we wanted him to start experiencing, what life was like in a school, in a classroom. And it kind of all started from there.
Again, guys, we're here with Mike George, CMV dad, chair of the New Brunswick CMV Canada chapter. If you're watching on Facebook, take a second to follow our channel, like. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. Mike is telling us now about his son, Ben, growing up CMV after being told that he would not walk or talk. I've know a lot of CMV stories, Mike. I think my absolute favorite one to tell is Ben's story. I think it's so heartwarming. If you're watching here and you haven't heard this punchline in the story, how unbelievably well the story ends. This is a story that I've told I don't know how many times, and I've only heard it from you. So I want you to keep going with this wonderful story. If you're just tuning in, you want to hear how this story ends with Ben, and how successful he's been, how much of a success story he is, and how you guys are as parents.
Sure. So I mean, just starting school was a major accomplishment, and it was a major challenge. Just to get Ben out the door, to get him to school every day. But eventually we got into a rhythm, and the school staff got comfortable with him. We actually changed schools midway through kindergarten. That's another story, because the culture, I guess, in the first school wasn't conducive to helping Ben's development. So we thought, this isn't working for you, this isn't working for us. And we found another school, but we found the right school. And I guess that's another part of it, is that it's very much not every teacher. And, I guess this was in the 90s, and it's probably still true today, but, not every teacher is comfortable with someone with complex needs. And, but we found the right teachers, and we found the right school that were openly accepting of him. And that was really, sort of the inclusion part of it, being an inclusive and supportive community in the school, was key for his development. And they realized that he may not do the same things as other students, but he could at least be included in all of those things. That made sense. And that was true all the way up into high school. And high school was really Ben advanced every year like a child would, and he followed a modified program. He didn't take the same subjects. And in fact, really in elementary and middle school, there was very little academic stuff. There was a little bit, but basically because they had no idea how to teach Ben. But once we got into high school, that's when we had made connections outside of New Brunswick with an expert in speech language pathology, and she actually dealt with and her clients and her research were some even involved ALS patients. So how you lose the ability to speak and communicate. So she had a wealth of knowledge to try to put basically a program in place for his teachers to help teach the material to Ben, and Ben to actually learn and respond.
Mike, do you have there's a really neat video online. Do you have any issues with me kind of showing stills of that video right now on the show here?
Yeah, go right ahead. Sure.
Okay, so
Yep.
so now he's in high school. You've made some connections.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of where there was a TSN turning point, right, for you guys?
It was, yeah. Because he, as I said, up until that time, there was very little academic development, and as I say, teachers didn't know how to do it. But in high school, they looked at it a little differently, and we had a lot more support, I guess, externally to, how do you put the things in place? How do you show the teachers essentially how to teach Ben, right? Because what we learned is that if you know how to teach him, then he knows how to learn. So it was always an assumption that if he wasn't learning, it was our problem, that we had to figure out how to show him how to teach him properly, which is a different sort of approach to, well, the material's too hard for the student, or they're not understanding it. We looked at it the opposite way, is that it was up to us to help him learn, and we tried to figure out a way to do that. When he was, I guess, in his last year of high school, that's when we were able to get his electronic communication device, which we call a talker, and he controls it with his eyes. And it's essentially like a tablet, and it has a language system built in, and he accesses the words and pulls them together, and it's like clicking a screen, and the words are spoken for him. So
this is like, I know it's not the same thing, but it'd be similar to what like Stephen Hawking had, I would imagine, something like that.
It's essentially the same thing.
Okay,
yep.
So he uses his eyes. I remember you explaining it to me. It's not gonna, like, the letters are not gonna show up. It's like it kind of thinks in a process for what the next word might be, and it kind of makes sentences for him as he uses his eyes and darts around the board, right?
Exactly. Yeah, there is it's I guess a fairly complex language system, in the sense that for you to search for the words in your mind, you know what the next word's going to be, but the actual talker has to figure out and do some prediction on, if you said one word, what's likely to be the next set of words, so that it becomes a lot more efficient in you trying to use it than trying to look through a dictionary, as an example, to find the next word. So it really changed things, and yes, it helps him to assimilate his thoughts and pull it all together.
That's unbelievable, because I know that, like, you're told in high school that your son is not really following. I'm paraphrasing, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that he's never going to read, he's never going to amount to anything, he's never going to, and meanwhile you're convinced that he understands, he can do, and so you actually go about it on your own.
Correct. Yeah.
So, like, you're being humble right now, Mike. And that's you. That's
right.
If the roles were reversed, I'd be pumping this tire. So I'm going to pump this story for you, because it's an unbelievable story. Remind me, you went down to the States or something?
Yeah. So, I mean, we had not great success with some local, specialists. And I was fed up and basically said, there's got to be technology out there, because that's what I do for a living, to help Ben do different things. So every year in Orlando, there's an Assistive Technology Industry Association, ATIA's national conference. So I looked it up. I looked up all the different things they talk about and the technology, and hopped on a plane and went down and said, you know what, I'm going to register for some of these training things. I want to see what's out there. And it turned out that there's all kinds of things out there that could help Ben. And so I made some connections with people, and one of the profs in the video, Dr. Banerjee, I went to one of her sessions, and in it, she basically described what was Ben, obviously a different person, where they were told, he's never going to learn, he's never going to do this, that, and the other thing. And a year after, in her care, under her guidance, he was able to use a talker, like you're seeing there, to speak or to, communicate different words. And I thought, well, that could be Ben. There's the answer right here. Ben, for basically 19 years, he didn't have a voice. And this technology gave him that voice to communicate. And then everything else opened up after that.
So this is not a cheap machine, I would imagine.
No, unfortunately it's not. I mean, when you look at, what you could buy a laptop for, it's no more complicated than that. But I mean, that's the assistive technology world, right? It's very, very expensive.
So you get your hands on one of these.
Yes.
Right. You kind of mortgage the farm or whatever you need to do at that point.
Pretty much. Yeah.
I remember you telling me the story. It's pretty inspiring, where you kind of pulled all the stops to make sure that you could get your hands on one of these machines, adaptive video learning machines. And you put it in front of Ben for the first time, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's like,
and he didn't want anything to do with it. No. So, I mean, this was, he put the screen in front of him, and all he had to do was pick either, 2 or 3 items. It didn't matter what it was. It was just to get the used to how this device actually works. And, you put him in front of him here, and you look over here, and you move it over here, and he'd look back the other way. And it was purposeful that he didn't want anything to do with this technology. And so we had it for a 2-week trial, and every day did the same thing. It's like, look, Ben, just give it a try. But he was very determined that, no, I don't like this. I don't know what it's about. And so I am not going to cooperate. And then on the last day, he tired or something, and he actually triggered a word, and that got his attention. And then, at the time I was, recording it and sending it to, putting it up on YouTube actually, and letting this prof look at them and say, is this a valid, is this going to be something we should pursue? Given what he's doing, because obviously she didn't live in close by. And on the last day, it was amazing, like what he was doing. And then he realized that, oh, I did that. Okay, well, Oko, I did that too. And it's making these sounds. And that was sort of the aha moment. Say, you know what, this thing's going to work. We've got to figure out how to do it. And he understands that it actually was him triggering those words.
So you were told for all these years that your son is never going to speak, that your son doesn't understand what's happening, that
right.
he's in a wheelchair, and he's whatever negative sentiment you were receiving. Yeah. And now words are coming out of this machine that he's finally figured out.
Yeah.
And then I guess sentences started coming or something, right?
Yeah. Well, if not completely.
I know it wasn't right away.
It wasn't right away, but yes. And then we were able to get a device for longer than that actually had a similar language system to what he's using today, where he could actually pull things together. And, that was game changing. That was life changing for us and for him. I mean, basically he, as I said, this was his voice. He was without a voice for 19 years, and now he had one, and he could get that out of there. And I remember one story. My father lived down the street from us. And he was, up in his years, and he would often call me for, whatever I had to fix this, or his TV wasn't working, or whatever the case was. And I don't know, I was in the middle of something, and I answered the phone, and he said, I need your help right away. And then Ben said because I had to fix something, and Ben on his talker, as I'm talking, said, emergency, a screwdriver. And that's what I needed to do. Like, he was sort of poking fun at that it really was an emergency, but in his mind, he was joking to say, yes, you got to get down there, Dad. It's an emergency. Go.
Yeah, Ben's got a sense of humor, right?
He does. Absolutely. Yeah.
For someone who's been through so much, it's so it's inspiring, is what it is.
Yeah.
If you're watching on YouTube, please take a sec to subscribe or to like and follow and share. Share is important. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. I'm here with Mike George. Mike's telling us the story of Ben. Mike, Ben then decides, or how does he decide that he wants to go to university, or what happens there?
Well, it was kind of a joint discussion with his teachers and himself and all of that. And sort of in the last few years of high school, we realized that he enjoys learning. And now that he has a voice and has ability to communicate, we were just getting started almost. So even though it was ending, his high school years were ending, we thought, well, we've got to keep going somehow. And we found a program at the University of Brunswick here in St. John that was designed for students or new students who may not have the academic requirements to be admitted into a standard program. And of course, Ben didn't, because he followed a modified program. And so we thought, well, you know what, let's give it a try. And let's keep going. And in effect, he's taking the same courses as you would if you're in a degree program. But the way it's structured, it's part-time, that you still get the same credits, but you don't get a degree, you get a certificate in the end. And so we started to roll in that program. And the first day, honestly, they've had students with disabilities and other sort of learning challenges, but never, the extent to which Ben was. And on the other hand, they were willing to give it a try and thought, okay, well, let's see what happens. Let's enroll in this introductory class and go from there. And quite honestly, we had no idea how this was going to happen. We didn't have an education assistant because, of course, once you're out of high school, the public system doesn't, support you. So both myself and one of his caregivers went for the first couple of weeks into classes and listened and tried to think, okay, how are we going to do this? And eventually we sort of found our way. We were able to hire an education assistant to go with him and to help him, go through the courses and figure out how to take the tests. He had to use his talker, obviously, to do that. Some of the profs were able to, restructure the tests so that they were multiple choice. So he would the question would be read to him. He would, decide what the answer was and select it on his talker. One of his second year sports psychology courses, he got the second highest mark in the class on one of the exams, which was just, the prof that was really a turning point for that prof, and saying, even though Ben doesn't speak, he's in a wheelchair, he's a genius, right? Or he knows this stuff.
This is it. Like, there's so many CMV parents out there that have kids that are extremely capable, and that our system, our archaic system of learning, is not necessarily proving that the kids have the capabilities or have the competencies. And it's one of my pet peeves is that we have some people that are in the education system that are living in the 1920s, and kids can learn in different ways, and you are proof of that. And man, this is so inspiring. I'm going to pull up something to the stream here, and I'll let you kind of talk this through. I believe this is, I could be wrong, but I believe this is his graduation, right?
That's high school.
Oh, high school. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah. But the video doesn't have anything to do with university yet. We're kind of working on that to do a sort of an addendum to it, but yeah.
Okay, but anyways, so now he's in school, and we are running a little low on time, so I don't want to rush you. But now he's in school, he's doing the courses, he's writing the exams, he's crushing it, he's getting the best marks, second best marks. He's writing papers, from what I recall.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Yeah, so writing papers.
Well, so that was a lengthy exercise, to be quite honest with you.
I can't imagine how long it would take to write a paper if you had to do it.
Yeah, so especially, and he took 2 history courses, and I hated history, but he seemed to like them. So, there would be a topic that he would take a couple of months. He only took 1 course per semester. I mean, it was just so time consuming for everything. But writing the essays was sort of taking his thoughts. The assistants that he had were amazing in trying to extract the information from him and extract the thoughts, and they'd take copies or you could print out what he was saying on his talker, and then kind of help them assemble it into a final paper. And, it was tedious, but it worked. And, it was enough, and it was enough of his original thought that the professors and the staff realized that, what, this stuff makes sense, and this is real. This isn't something we just made up. And it was as good as, most of the other students that were in there.
Unbelievable. So now it takes him how long? It takes him
6 years. He graduated. He graduated last year, with a certificate in general studies. Yeah. And I mean, that's
the greatest, most inspiring story.
I think we were more tired than he was to actually last that long, but he wanted to go every time, And
so the guy has a university certificate. Ben has a university certificate.
He does, yeah.
That's so inspiring.
Hangs in his bedroom. He's very proud of it.
I'd have 10 copies if I were him. I'd have them all over the place. And and then you guys have decided to start. I have about a minute left, so we do have to run. But you started Soaring Families to support And I'll pull up the website here. I've been pulling up the website. We're going to show it on the bottom here, but it's soaringfamilies.com. Basically, this is a support. Go ahead. Tell us about Soaring Families.
We wanted to give back. We wanted to help families who were struggling as much as we were and more. And it's basically to help families, create more balance, energy, and freedom in their life. And we actually, in the last month, we changed the upfront page to help people, with coping better, because it's a big, our worlds are upside down, right? And so, but we focus on, one of the things we really focus on is helping families create a best home care experience, because we've only been successful because we've had lots of support around us.
Well, thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate you taking the time. Ben's story is a phenomenal story. If you're a parent out there and you have a similar story or any story about CMV, we'd love to hear it. Please go to our website, www.cmvcanada.com. Sign up to our newsletter. Please sign up to our newsletter. We send regular newsletters to update parents. If you're a parent, you want to get involved at a deep level like Mike, or at any level, reach out to us. We always need volunteers. We need people to support. We need donors. We are fully funded by fundraising and donors. So if you have it in you have it in your heart, and you're able to afford it, to donate, we are a registered charity and we issue full tax receipts, CRA tax receipts in Canada. Mike, thank you so much for taking the time. It's been another fantastic edition of the CMV Checkup. You're a beauty, fantastic human being, great father to Ben, and an amazing story. I'm so glad I met you, and I'm so glad that you're involved with the charity. Thanks so much, everyone. You guys have a great day and a great weekend.
See ya.
See you, Mike.